Happy Halloween, Merry Christmas, or happy whatever random day in December this gets uploaded because I moved and my entire upload schedule got bored. It is that special time of year where I make a video about a monster I wanted to be a Halloween episode, and instead of saving it till next year, I just uploaded in December. Those of you who have been around for a while know that giants are one of my favorite monster types in D&D, and something I feel doesn't get explored enough with giants, or most D&D creatures for that matter, is how they interact with the world beyond their own little niche. For example, what is an undead giant like? Sure, you could just take the giant stat block, slap some undead traits on there like a cool sticker, and away you go. But that's not exceptionally interesting now, is it? Much like Andre of the same name, giants unfortunately often fall into the trope of being just humans, but big. Though despite what their stat blocks might have you believe, they are extremely interesting creatures with tons of deep lore and connections to the arcane that stem well beyond a mere human. And today's monster truly answers a question that nobody was asking, which is what if you took a giant, cut off its head, and then bound it to you in a profane ritual forcing it to serve as an undead minion? Well, spoilers, they don't serve anyone, they're too smart for that. But they do endeavor to be one of the most interesting and highly disturbing creatures to ever come from the pages of a D&D book. So buckle up, this is gonna be a gross and weird episode, but it is time for Monster of the Week. A crawling head seems pretty straightforward as a concept, no? Wrong. These creatures are one of the most unique undead monsters out there. Originating in the Fiend Folio for D&D 3.5, this guy is just a nightmare to look at. They are indeed a severed giant head that crawls around using a mess of tendrils which sprout from its neck wound. Certainly no false advertising here. The first crawling head was created by a necromancer who thought he was about to drop the most fire recipe for an undead minion of all time. And he was right about the undead part, just not the minion part. See, the head is where you store your brain, and a giant brain means giant smarts. So unlike most other undead, the crawling head has an intelligence score of 20, putting them at the apex of what any typical humanoid wizard would be able to achieve. This intelligence created a problem for our necromancer friend because instead of following his commands, the newly created undead horror said, "I shan't be doing that," and bit the wizard's head off. And when this creature bites someone's head off, it's real bad. And not just because they've bitten someone's head off, a thing most people aren't really stoked about. When this particular undead bites someone's head off, it stores the newly decapitated head within itself in a sort of fleshy membrane. This is not only yucky, but it also allows the undead abomination to steal information from the creature whose head it is currently borrowing. It also provides the crawling head with a resource to fuel some of its abilities. That's right, folks, this guy uses severed heads as a resource for channeling magic, and it can hold up to 30 of them at a time. That's straight up terrible. I hate that. Why are we even talking about this monster? Because we like to scare our players. Oh yeah. But why does it do this? Well, being literally entirely made of head, these undead abominations have an innate lust for knowledge and secrets. They hoard knowledge and are extremely greedy with the secrets they know. This can make them invaluable sources of information, but it can also be really frustrating to deal with if you're trying to get them to give up a specific piece of information they don't want to give up. Most of the time, they're just straight up not going to tell you unless you can offer them something of equal value, whether that be something you know, a piece of treasure, or like a cool race car poster. In fact, this is one of the primary reasons people might seek out a crawling head in the first place, in order to seek out a piece of information that is not easy to come by. Crawling heads are so much fun because as intelligent creatures of pretty substantial power, they will make layers, have minions, and very well could even act as the big bad of an entire campaign. But we'll get to that. Something else about this monster that is both mysterious and just packed with horrific implications is the fact that nobody knows how they really propagate, but they are most certainly propagating. Since the first crawling head was created in areas where giants tend to exist, they just tend to pop up from time to time. How do they multiply? And why? Literally no one knows. But I have to imagine it involves some giant decapitation and some cool words in a forbidden tongue that merely speaking aloud serve as an act of heresy against the natural world and all creation itself. And that brings us to the next part of this video. What kind of abilities might a crawling head actually have? The crawling head clocks in with a CR of 18, making them a truly terrifying threat to contend with. Normally, I tend to gravitate more towards monsters of kind of the middling CR values, especially on this channel, because they're gonna be useful to more people out there. More of you watching are gonna have use for a CR 10 monster than something that's CR 18 or 19 or 30 for that matter. But in this specific instance, I actually love how powerful this creature is. They're just so unconventional, weird, and not at all what you'd expect from an undead giant's head. Now starting off, these guys are slow with a move speed of 20 feet. They do, however, have a climb speed, which is neat and cool, but they're not exactly crawling around at the speed of sound. But they are doing lots of stuff in the head department, such as biting them off. The crawling head has a Vorpal bite attack, which does a ton of damage, but also crits on a 19 or 20, and if it scores a crit, much like the Vorpal sword, it decapitates the target, severing their head and storing said newly severed head inside of its body. And that's where its Cranium Collector trait comes into play. This just puts into words how its head storage abilities work, but essentially at any given time, they are assumed to have 1d6 plus 8 heads in storage, and they can contain up to 30. And if they have more than 10 stored at once, their Cacophony trait comes online. This trait is activated whenever the crawling head makes an attack roll with 10 or more heads in storage, because all of those heads are screaming and making just an awful mess of sound, which everyone hates. They hate it so much, in fact, they become frightened of the crawling head. Because, yeah, it's a giant undead head filled with smaller heads, all of which are screaming. That's terrifying. What do you even mean? It can also attack with those meaty neck tendrils, which, of course, are gonna grapple some fools, and it can cast spells. It can do a cool little combo of Speak with Dead and Detect Thoughts to have a chat with the heads inside its body, so that's fun. And it can even cast Gentle Repose, so it can prevent those heads from rotting away. Very cool. It can also use Inflict Wounds, Create Undead, Fear, and Shield, which are all very useful for doing combat. And once per day, it can throw out a cheeky Finger of Death. But that's not all it can do. Using the head stored in its body as a resource akin to sorcery points, the crawling head can do a few very uncool things. For one, it can absorb one of the heads in its body to quicken a spell, allowing it to cast a spell that usually requires an action as a bonus action, and as a legendary action, it can absorb a head to regain 3d8 hit points. Now, all of this is going to gradually diminish its supply of heads and thus turn off that horrible screaming eventually, but like, a quickened Inflict Wounds? Maybe worth it. It can also squeeze the life out of a creature it has grappled as a legendary action to inflict some more damage, and lastly, as a reaction to someone trying to read its thoughts, the crawling head can unleash a cacophony of psychic screams into the mind of the creature attempting to read its mind, causing 1d6 psychic damage per head in storage. The implications of that are terrifying. But all in all, just a truly horrific and fun creature to run in combat with all sorts of tricks up its sleeves, its turtleneck, a place where it hides things. Plus, as with any spellcasting monster, if you want to make an encounter truly yours, you can always expand that list of spells to make it more specific to your group and interesting. Personally, I really like the idea that if they're storing the head of, say, a wizard, they might be able to cast spells that that wizard knew when they were an alive person. And that may be a good explanation for why they are after the specific head of a certain NPC or maybe even a PC. But I suppose that's starting to get into plot hooks. And hey, it's about that time anyways. So first and foremost, this creature is like tailor-made to be a primary antagonist of a campaign, or at the very least, kind of a mid-boss that you fight halfway through the game. Obviously, the crawling head isn't gonna be just out in the world running errands. It's gonna have minions for that. But say a group of necromancers all hoping to learn from the crawling head who are acting as its minions in exchange for arcane secrets could be very cool. You'd set up this circle of wizards as the bad guys, and then over time it would be revealed that they work for some kind of dark master. And of course, in the final confrontation, the party is made to square off with this horrible abomination filled with the heads of students who failed it in some way. Talk about a tough prof, am I right, fellas? Or perhaps there's a giant ruler who secretly has the severed head of a past king kept an unlife to use as a resource of information, sacrificing small humanoids to it every so often to keep the creature satisfied. But of course, using its malignant intelligence, the crawling head would subtly be manipulating the giant ruler into some course of action that would allow the crawling head to seize control. Real worm tongue hours over here. There's also always the possibility that the crawling head is encountered randomly, likely in a dungeon. They're fairly smart, so I feel like this isn't gonna be a super common thing to have happen, but there is a possibility that one of them has become trapped somehow, either by accident or intentionally, either by its creator or perhaps even another group of adventurers. In either case, that could make a really interesting encounter for your party. And as I mentioned before, they can of course also be used as a means of giving information to your players. Say you've got this really important magic artifact whose location has been lost to time, or maybe some other campaign-defining secret. There are lots of ways that a party might go about discovering that information, but beseeching the wisdom of an ancient undead giant's head is certain to be something they have not done before. Though no matter how you choose to use this monster, as always, located in the description down below is a complete 5th edition stat block conversion from 3E so that you can use this monster in your current Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Everything you need to run this creature is all down there in the Google Doc. But of course, if you are one of my lovely patrons over on the Dungeon Dad Patreon page, you can find the high-res PDF stat block, which has all the same information, but it's got some new fancy schmancy artwork done by Tam this week. Oh my god, I hate it. Get that off the screen. All jokes aside, I think that Tam crushed this one. It's super gross. I don't like looking at it, and I had to look at it a lot while editing this video. But yeah, you get access to the stat blocks a few days early before the videos go live, and it helps support me and keep me as an alive guy. Personally, I think that's dope. And speaking of things that are dope, that reminds me I want to give a special shout out to this week's randomly selected Patron of the Week. Thank you so much to Robert Hazen. Your support means the most. I truly appreciate it. Literally couldn't do this without you, or the rest of you guys supporting me on Patreon, or you for watching this video. Thank you for watching. That's cool of you to do. If you like what I do here and you want to support the channel in a way that is free, consider subscribing if you're not already. Throw a like down there, leave a comment, let me know what your favorite type of head is. Or, you know, if you've got a monster suggestion for a monster from a previous edition of Dungeons & Dragons, or maybe another role-playing game such as Pathfinder, let me know about that too. And who knows, you might just see it show up in a future episode of Monster of the Week. But in any case, that's all I got for you this week. I hope you had a happy holiday season. I hope 2024 was kind to you. And I really hope this video gets up before the end of the year, otherwise this is gonna seem foolish. It'll be up before the end of the year. It must be up before the end of the year. It has to be up before the end of the year. There's no way this is happening in January. I'm really setting myself up to look like a clown here. But speaking of things that are going up in January, keep an eye on this channel because I have got something coming out on January 7th. Mark the date. Let's just say I've got my hands on something that I'm going to show you for the first time, literally ever, and it's gonna be pretty dang cool. So you're gonna wanna be checking out the Dungeon Dad channel on January 7th, 2025 for a really cool video about a thing I can't talk about yet, but you will see it there and it will be a neat thing. It will be a cool thing, a great thing even. I feel like I'm really hyping this up. I'll see you then. Thanks again for watching. Till January 7th.